Hi everyone, my name is Lazaros.Karaliotas and I'm a senior lecturer in urban geography at the School of Geographical and Earth Sciences at the University of Glasgow. A very warm welcome to this channel talent session on placemaking. The aim of this session is actually to think a bit more about placemaking by engaging with what at first sight might seem a rather simple or even naive question, which is who actually makes a place. In doing so, I will be drawing from my expertise in urban geography, so you could also frame the question as who actually makes a city. When we talk about a city, we often talk as if it is a given thing, a set of buildings, streets, neighborhoods, something that is just there. But a city is not just a collection of objects. A city is a set of relationships. It is always work in progress, if you like. It has to be made, held together, maintained, and constantly remade. So the question, who makes a place, is not just a philosophical question. It is a very practical one, because once we ask this question, we start to notice things we usually ignore. The kinds of work that keep urban life going, the rules and decisions that shape what is possible, and the struggles that emerge when different groups want different cities. So to begin our conversation then, I'll start with the most familiar answer to the question of who makes a place. I want to call this answer the city on paper. A lot of urban change is organized through paperwork, plans, and formal procedures. If you want to build something, demolish something, convert a building, change the use of land, none of those things happens without a chain of documents and approvals. So we can think of a city as made through plans, permits, and projects. Cities are shaped through decisions about what counts as development, what counts as acceptable, and what counts as improvement. They are also shaped through investment decisions and budgets. What gets funded, what doesn't, what is treated as urgent, and what is treated as optional. And of course, cities are shaped through rules. Rules that determines what gets built, where it gets built, and for whom. All of those negotiations, the answers to all of those questions is a result of power. If you look at any city, you can see how much of it has been shaped by planning systems, by development projects, by regulatory frameworks, by the fact that some forms of urban change are allowed and encouraged while others are blocked or ignored. But if we stop here, we end up with an image of the city that is a little too tidy. It is a little bit too neat, as if the city is mainly produced in planning offices through documents and policies. But a city, of course, does not only exist on paper. It is not only a set of plans and regulations. A city also has to come to life. And there's at least three simple ways of thinking about that. First of all, a city depends on infrastructure networks. By infrastructures, I mean the systems that make urban life possible. Energy, water, transport, waste systems, digital connectivity, and so on. Some of these systems are visible, many of them are buried, hidden, or taken for granted. But without all of those systems, city life does not work. Secondly, a city runs on work. Infrastructure does not run itself. Pipes do not maintain themselves. Streets do not clean themselves. Transport does not run on its own. People often talk about cities as if they are machines, but no machine works without labor. And thirdly, a city takes shape through everyday life. Even if nothing big is being built, cities are constantly being shaped by how people move through them, how they meet, what they do, what they avoid to do, what they claim, what they care for, and how they make their lives. So the idea here is quite simple actually. Yes, planning does matter, but cities become real through infrastructures, through work, and through everyday life. If this is true then, who is involved in making a city? Cities are made by many different actors, not just one. Firstly, institutions, and by that I mean city councils, regulators, planners, and so on and so forth. Institutions set the rules, approve projects, manage budgets, and shape the priorities for a city. They decide what is legitimate, what is illegal, what is allowed, and what is blocked in a city. Even when they say they are being neutral in their decisions, they are actually making choices about what kinds of urban life should be supported and what not. Secondly, money. And by this I mean developers, investors, landlords, and so on. Cities are constantly shaped by property markets and investment strategies. Investors and developers can buy land, own housing, reshape neighborhoods, speculate on what an area might become in the future. A lot of urban change happens through decisions that are framed as economic or market-driven. But those decisions also have important social consequences. Thirdly, work, labor. Infrastructure and service workers on energy, water, transport, care and cleaning is what makes a city. This is quite crucial. The city is not just built once and left to survive. It is maintained every day. And a lot of the labor that makes every city possible is either ignored, underpaid, or treated as sort of background. Finally, but equally importantly, everyday life. The encounters, the communities, the residents, the uses of space that exist in a city. Cities are shaped by how people use them, how people inhabit streets and parks, how people gather and move, how people make neighborhoods feel welcoming or hostile perhaps, and how people care for each other and how people survive in a city. So if we want to understand how cities come to life, then we have to take work seriously. Cities depend on work that keeps water, energy and transport moving. Without energy, you don't have heating, lighting, charging. You don't have basic functions for your everyday life. Without water, you don't have health, hygiene. You don't have food systems. Without transport, you don't have movement, you don't have jobs, you don't have education, you don't have a social life. These are not luxuries, they are the conditions of urban life itself. Cities also depend on the work of cleaning, repairing and maintaining streets and buildings. And this is a good moment to notice something. When things work as they are intended, when the work around infrastructure is done well, we don't see it. We rarely notice it. The city appears to run smoothly and kind of by itself. We notice the work and the infrastructure that's involved around that only when it fails, when rubbish piles up, when transport breaks down, when a water pipe bursts, when a power cut happens, when roads decay, when maintenance is delayed. And last but not least, cities depend on care work that makes daily life possible. Nurseries, schools, hospitals, and the work that happens there. Care work is a good example here because it reminds us that a city is not just pipes and cables and roads. A city is also about bodies, it is about time, exhaustion, support and survival. So the city is not only made through visible development, it is held together through labor. But labor doesn't only mean paid work. It also connects to everyday life, the rhythms, the routines, the encounters that shape places. So that's where we go next then. Everyday life makes places not in a sort of a romantic way, but in a very practical sense. Places take shape through how people move, their commutes, their routes, the shortcuts they use, the spaces they avoid, the parts of the city they pass through and the parts they never enter. Places take shape through where people meet, the parks, the cafes, the bus stops, the streets, the benches, the corners. A place becomes a place partly because of where people gather and because of what kinds of encounters become possible there. And places take shape through what people do, shopping, caring, hanging out, protesting, and so on and so forth. Even something as simple as hanging out matters. Where do young people spend time, for example? Where are they allowed to spend time? Where do they get moved on? Where do they feel welcomed? These are not small questions. They shape what kind of city exists. So if the previous slide suggested that work keeps the city running, this one tells us that everyday life gives the city its kind of texture, its rhythms, rhythms, its atmosphere, its social meaning. Now, if cities are made by all of those actors and practices, a simple conclusion follows. Not everyone wants the same city. Different actors and different groups of people have competing visions for the city. Developers and landlords often want higher rents, higher property values, and new builds. That doesn't mean they are evil, of course. It means their relationship to the city is shaped by property and profit. For them, urban change is often framed as upgrading, improvement, investment, or opportunity. Councils and governments, on the other hand, often focus on growth, investment, targets, and regeneration. Again, this is not because they all share the same politics, the same political agenda, but because they are often judged by indicators like how many jobs were created, how much investment was attracted, were the kind of economic targets hit, the budget, have they been balanced, and so on and so forth. Regeneration becomes a powerful story for councils and governments, a way of framing change as positive and necessary. A different actor is workers who have a different relationship to the city. They care about working conditions, they care about safety, time, and reliable jobs. Their experience of the city is shaped by wages, by shifts, commuting, stress, and the everyday demands of keeping things running. Residents, more generally, care about affordability, access to services, and stability in their lives. When rents rise, when services get cut, when a neighborhood becomes unaffordable, residents experience that as a direct threat to their everyday life. And young people often want places to meet, affordable travel, and a feeling of being welcome. This last thing matters, not just having spaces, but feeling you belong in the city, that you are not constantly treated as out of place. So the key point I'm trying to make here is that the city is produced by multiple groups and that those groups often want different cities. And this is where friction begins. So the next slide asks exactly what happens when visions and interests collide. This is the messy reality of placemaking. Urban change is made through projects. What gets built, upgraded, removed, or neglected. It's not only what is built, it's also what is allowed to decay, what is not repaired, what is abandoned, what is treated as disposable. Urban change also plays out through everyday friction, through noise, traffic, policing, queues, closures, rent prices. I'm emphasizing these everyday frictions because they are how people actually experience urban change. Often, you don't experience regeneration as a policy document. You experience it as construction noise at 7 a.m., as a bus route changing, as the coffee shop you used to enjoy becoming too expensive, as more policing in a square, as a park becoming managed differently, as the neighborhood feeling like it's less yours, less welcoming. And these collisions produce winners and losers. Some people gain value and convenience. Other urban dwellers lose stability and access to housing or services. Now, at this point, you might think, fine, that's just how cities work. Different interests collide, and there is negotiation. But that can make urban change sound as if it's neutral, as if the city is simply a balancing act. When visions and interests collide, however, they do not collide on equal terms. Urban change is commonly settled quietly through rules, budgets, and property markets, or what we might want to call common sense stories of improvement. Those stories do matter. Regeneration is one story, revitalization is another story, safety can become another story, and so on and so forth. These terms make certain kinds of change appear as if they are neutral and necessary, and they often hide the fact that cities could be made differently. And the costs of this change are often shifted onto everyday urban dwellers. Higher rents, longer journeys to work, lost space, weaker services. This doesn't mean the city is always one-sided. It means that the city is often made by pushing costs downwards into people's time, money, mobility, and daily survival. So the question actually becomes, what makes this political? Contestation begins when people refuse to absorb those costs of urban change and make them public. That can mean many things. Sometimes it means organized campaigns, sometimes it means strikes, sometimes it means public meetings, sometimes it means everyday acts of claiming space, sometimes it refers to solidarity practices, sometimes it simply refers to refusing to accept that change is inevitable. Contestation is what happens when a quiet sort of settlement is interrupted, when people say this is not just how things are, this is a choice and it can be challenged. So when you look at any neighborhood change, ask yourselves, what is being gained, what is being lost, who is able to contest this? So before the live session, I'd like you to do something simple. Pick one of the viewpoints that is listed on the slide, or anything else, really. Are you a resident? Are you a worker? Are you a developer? Are you a council member? Are you a young person? Or any other group that you think matters? And then imagine an ideal city from this specific viewpoint. What matters most for you? And then ask yourself, what trade-off would you accept and what would you refuse? An ideal city is never ideal for everyone in the same way. Every vision of a good city comes with priorities, costs, and compromises. So come to the live session with a viewpoint in mind and with any questions you want to ask about how places are made. And we'll use the live session to unpack your questions, connect them back to these ideas we discussed just now, and think together about what it means to make cities differently. Thank you very much, and I'll see you in the live session.